Hello all, welcome to this video on Network Programming Lab. Today I'll be talking about Stop and Wait ARQ Flow Control Protocol and its implementation in C. The most important responsibilities of the data link layer are flow control and error control. Collectively, these functions are known as data link control. Flow control refers to a set of procedures that are used to restrict the amount of data that the sender can send before waiting for acknowledgement. Error control in the data link layer is based on automatic repeat request, which is the retransmission of data. Now looking into the protocols available, we have protocols available for noiseless channels and noisy channels. For noiseless channels, they are simplest protocol and stop and wait protocol, whereas for noisy channel, it is stop and wait ARQ, go back and ARQ, and selective repeat ARQ. Now let us look into noiseless channels. Here we make an assumption that this is an idle channel in which no frames are lost, duplicated or corrupted. And we have two protocols for this, which is simplest protocol and stop and wait protocol. Now looking into the simplest protocol, we have the sender and the receiver, and we have three layers each shown for both sender and receiver, which is network layer, data link layer and physical layer. Data frames are just sent from the sender to the receiver. There are no acknowledgement packets expected back from the receiver. And the algorithm for sender and receiver will repeat forever, and they will be activated based on the request from the network layer in case of sender and the request from the physical layer in case of the receiver. Now this is a flow diagram for the same. Now this algorithm is very simple. The sender sends a sequence of frames without even thinking about the receiver. To send 3 frames, 3 events will occur at the sender side and 3 events at the receiver side. The data frames are shown by tilted boxes. The height of the box defines the transmission time difference between the first bit and the last bit in the frame. Now next, we look into the stop and wait protocol. Now looking into stop and wait, similarly as in case of simplest, here too we have the 3 layers for the sender side and the receiver side, which is network layer, data link layer and physical layer. And here also the data frame will be sent. But unlike simplest protocol, there is an acknowledgement from the receiver to sender. So these blocks will have a small difference. Here stop and wait, the sender algorithm will be controlled both by the network layer and the physical layer, because there is a case of sending the data frame and also receiving the acknowledgement, whereas in case of receiver, only an acknowledgement is sent out to the sender. This is also a very simple algorithm. The sender will send 1 frame and wait for the feedback from the receiver, which is clear from this flow control protocol. Now when the acknowledgement arrives, the sender will send the next frame. Note that sending 2 frames in the protocol will involve the sender in 4 events and the receiver in 2 events. Now looking into the noisy channels, although the stop and wait protocol gives us an idea of how to add flow control to its predecessor, noiseless channels are non-existent. So we have 3 solutions for noisy channels, which are stop and wait ARQ, go back and ARQ and selective repeat ARQ. Now we will be focusing on stop and wait ARQ in this video. Now error correction in stop and wait ARQ is done by keeping a copy of the send frame and retransmitting the frame when the timer expires. In stop and wait ARQ, we use sequence numbers to number the frames. The sequence numbers are based on modulo 2 arithmetic. Here the acknowledgement number is always announced in modulo 2 arithmetic, the sequence number of the next frame expected. This diagram shows the design of stop and wait ARQ protocol. Now these are the frames to be sent, and these will mark the frames that are to be received. Here we have the data frames sent from the sender to the receiver and acknowledgement from receiver to the sender. Each data frame will have a sequence number and the acknowledgement will have an acknowledgement number. Compared to the previous design of stop and wait protocol, here the only difference is there will be a timer which is connected to the sender, which will have an event called as timeout. Now these timer can be restarted based on the requirement. Now let us look into the algorithm for stop and wait ARQ sender side. Now here, as seen in this diagram, we are preparing the frame to be sent. So in the first case, it will be the frame 0. So that is Sn is equal to 0. Now sent is a variable which will tell us the status of whether the packet was sent or not. So since we are going to send the packet, it will be set as true. Now we need an infinite loop to deal both the sender and the receiver side. That is why we have set the loop as while true. Now we go for an event wait, that is either a send or a receive. Now the sender is in waiting stage. Now if the event that occurred is to send a request, and if the status of the sent is true, which means the sender has to send data to the receiver. As part of this, it is supposed to get the data, then it will make a frame which is Sn that is to be sent. Then it will store this frame Sn so that in case of retransmission, this copy can be sent, and it will actually send the frame. After sending the frame, the timer will be started, and the sequence number will be incremented, pointing to the next packet to be sent. Now since the sequence number has been incremented, the send is set to false. Now again, after the packet is sent, the sender will go into a waiting state. Now it is expecting an acknowledgement from the receiver side. Now the event will be to check if the acknowledgement has arrived or not. Now it has arrived, so it will receive the frame with the corresponding acknowledgement number. Now we need to check if this acknowledgement has been received correctly or not. So there are two conditions for that. We are checking if the acknowledgement is not corrupted and if the acknowledgement number will be equal to the sequence number of the next packet to be sent. Now if both the conditions are satisfied, it means we have received the acknowledgement for the corresponding frame that was sent. So the timer will be stopped and the already sent data will be removed, which is Sn minus 1, and the send status will be set to true in order to send the next packet. Now in any case, if the event is a timeout, it means that the timer will have to be restarted, and as a result of this, the frame will be resent again. The frame that is resent is Sn minus 1. Since we will increment Sn each time after sending the required sequence number packet. Now looking into the receiver, we will mark the frame that is expected to arrive, which is 0. Again the infinite loop and going into the wait state. Now first of all, we are expecting a packet from the sender. Now that is marked by the event frame arrived. So the frame will be received, and we also need to check if the frame is corrupted or not. So if in any case the frame is corrupted, then the system will go into a sleep mode, because we will have to wait again for the retransmission to happen. Also, we'll check if the sequence number and the frame that you expected are the same, to check if the packets have arrived in order or not. Now, if they match, we'll take the data, we deliver the data, and we'll increment the receiver frame. That is, it is incremented to the next packet that is expected. Now, after this, we'll send the acknowledgement for this particular packet that you expected. Now, this is a flow diagram for the same. Now, in this diagram, we can see that frame 0 is sent and acknowledged. Now, frame 1 is lost and it is resent again only after the timer was restarted. That is when it was reset. The resent frame 1 is acknowledged and the timer is stopped here after the acknowledgement is received. Now, frame 0 is sent and it is also acknowledged, but the acknowledgement is lost. So what it does, the problem here is the sender has no idea if the frame or the acknowledgement is lost. So what it does is it will reset the timer which was already started here, and it will again retransmit the frame 0 which was acknowledged before, but the acknowledgement was lost, and the packet will be acknowledged again. Now, looking into the efficiency, it is very inefficient if the channel has a large bandwidth and if the round trip delay is long. The product of these two properties is called bandwidth delay product. It is a measure of the number of bits we can send out of a system while waiting for news from the receiver side. Now, we will see some of the problems that are addressed by stop and wait ARQ and how they are solved. We'll look into it one by one. The first is the problem of lost data packet. When a sender sends the data packet and receiver does not receive the data packet, it means that the data is lost in between the transmission. So to overcome this type of problem, the sender uses a timer. When the sender sends the data packet, it starts a timer. If the timer goes off before receiving the acknowledgement from the receiver, the sender will retransmit the same data packet. Now, looking into the problem of lost acknowledgement. When a sender sends the packet and receiver receives the packet, but the acknowledgement from the receiver is not received, it means the acknowledgement is lost in between the transmission. To solve this problem, the sender uses sequence numbering. When the sender sends the packet, it attaches a certain sequence number which helps the receiver to identify the data packet. If the timer goes off before receiving the acknowledgement, the sender retransmits the same data packet. But in this case, the receiver already has a data packet, so it discards the data and sends back an acknowledgement. This tells the sender that the certain data packet is now received correctly. Now, the next is the problem of delayed acknowledgement. When the sender sends the data packet and receiver receives the packet, but acknowledgement from the receiver is not received, it means the acknowledgement is lost or delayed. To solve this, the sender uses sequence numbering. Now, if the sender has received the previously sent acknowledgement, then the newer acknowledgement is discarded by the sender. Next is the problem of damaged packet. When the sender sends the data packet and receiver receives it, but received data packet is corrupted, then the receiver will use a negative acknowledgement. So, if the sender receives a negative acknowledgement, then the sender will retransmit the data packet. Now, looking into the C program that we have implemented here. Now, for the case of problem of damaged packet that we discussed here, instead of using a separate use case for negative acknowledgement, what I have done is in this program is, for any problem with the acknowledgement, the simple solution is retransmission, as already said here. Now, I have clubbed it into a single use case. Now, the program is similar to the socket programming, which I have discussed in a previous video. So, for explanation related to that, in case of TCP and UDP, kindly refer that video. Now, I am skipping all the code that is related to socket specific area. So as usual, a socket is created, all its address family is set accordingly, and the socket is going through a binding phase. Then it will start listening, since this is the code for server. And there are also suitable conditions that are set here in order to deal with the case where we need to see if the corresponding case has worked successfully or not. Now there will be a request from the client side, so the sender will need to wait and accept it. So if it is successfully accepted, a corresponding return value will be present. In case of an error, an exit function will be executed. Now I am doing this demo for the case of 5 packets. So I am initializing the value of k with 5, which is done here, and I'll decrement it until it is 0. I'll also use a variable called m, which will start from 1 and go till 5, which will keep track of the sequence number in ascending order. K will be doing it in the descending order. So K will be controlling the main loop in this program. So what is a server purpose? It is to receive data from the client. So in this code, the client will be the sender and server will be the receiver. Now the server will execute receive function, and what it does is it will receive the packet and check the content inside it. So I have set the code in such a way that for the transmission of 5 packets, if the data is to be shown as being successfully received, I will write the string called frame inside it for the successful receiving. That is, it will check if the received frame has a string called frame stored in it. If it is so, it will say that the packet has been successfully received, else it will say that there was some error in it. Also, I have set a case where out of these 5 packets, only those with sequence numbers which are even will have a successful transmission. All the other cases, that is for 1, 3 and 5, it is set in such a way that there will be an error in receiving the packet or a delay. So there will be a retransmission in both the sender and the receiver side. That condition is checked here, where we check if m is an even number. Now if m is even, like I said, the acknowledgement should be sent properly. So the string ACK will be written in that. So in all the other cases, I am taking it to a retransmission case. So I will change the string that is to be stored in the packet that is to be sent to the client. So that will be KCA, and it will tell that the acknowledgement was lost, because that is a case I am setting here. Then what it does is it waits for 3 seconds in order to retransmit the frame. Then I'll rewrite the buffer content as ACK, since I am trying to retransmit the acknowledgement, and do a sleep timer for 3 seconds. After that, it will be correctly received by the client side. Now in all the other cases where m does not have to be checked in this manner, what it does is it will normally send the acknowledgement, and after that string is displayed, it will actually send the content to the buffer, and we'll also check the return value if it was successfully sent or not. Now outside this main loop which I talked about, which was set using the value of k, which is this, I'll decrement the value of k and increment the value of m. Then finally the socket is closed. Similarly for client side, which is the sender side in our case, the code will be similar except very minor changes. One is, after setting the address family of the socket, we will need to give the connection request to the server, which is the receiver. That is taken as an assumption here. Then I'll check the return value. Then there is the while loop. Here, what is the sender doing first? It will be executing the send portion. So again, what it does is it will check if there is a sequence number or the current sequence number is even or not. If it's even, then the frame has to be sent properly. So the string copied to buffer will be frame and it will be sent. In all the other cases, I will send this string as error. So after seeing this, the receiver will understand that the packet received is from an odd sequence number. Then I'll report it as a packet loss. Then I'll set a timer. After 3 seconds, I'll try a retransmission. There I'll reset this buffer error as buffer free, because I'm aiming for a successful transmission after 3 seconds. Then I'll actually send the packet. Then after that, I'm waiting to receive the acknowledgement. There is a receive function. In that, the acknowledgement is received. Then I'll check if there is any error in receiving it. Then accordingly, an error message will be displayed. That is done here. If it is ACK, means the acknowledgement is correctly received. For any other value, it will say that there is some error or it has not been received. And finally, the socket is closed. Now this is a sample output. Here this is server and a client. Server is in listening mode. Client sends the first packet. Since it's an odd number, it will be a packet loss. Waits for 3 seconds. Retransmission, sending 1, receiving 1 successfully. Since this is odd, I have set it to have an acknowledgement loss here. So acknowledgement is lost. Waiting for 3 seconds. Retransmitting the acknowledgement. Sending acknowledgement 1. Acknowledgement 1 is received. Again, 2 is an even number. So sending 2, it will be received here correctly. And again sending the acknowledgement for 2, that will also be received correctly. Again it's 3, which is an odd number. It will be the same case as 1, which will be repeated for 5 also. And for the case of sequence number 4, it will be similar to that of 2. So that is how we have shown the demo for all the 5 frames. Now we look into a demo of the same. This is the code for the server side, and this is the code for the client side that we already discussed. Now I have opened 2 terminals, compiling server side code and running it, compiling the client side code and running it. First packet, then second packet successful, third packet retransmission, fourth packet successful, and fifth packet will be retransmitted. So the retransmission in this case will be happening both for the acknowledgement and the packet. That's all for now. Thank you for watching.